Star Citizen Alpha 4.10 is rapidly approaching, and while everyone is busy speculating about new ships, new gameplay features, and what client PR games might have planned next, I think it's time to talk about something even more important. Because before we ask for more content, we need to ask for a better game. Alpha 4.9 has brought some genuinely exciting additions to the Persistent universe, but it has also exposed a number of long-standing technical issues that continue to affect almost every play session. These aren't obscure bugs that only happen once in a while, they are issues that thousands of players encounter every single day. Now, this video is not going to be about complaining for the sake of complaining. Developing a game as ambitious as Star Citizen has never been easy, and no one expects every patch to be perfect. But there comes a point where certain issues have existed long enough so that they deserve to become the top priority. So today, instead of talking about what new features I want in Alpha 4.10, I want to focus on the things I hope disappear from the game altogether. These are the bugs, technical problems, and quality of life issues that I believe client PR games should tackle before asking us to get excited about the next big addition. So let's take a look at the biggest issues that hopefully Alpha 4.10 finally leaves behind. Wait, what's that? We have a giveaway? That's right, I'm giving away a package this month. It is a Shiv and a Basher all together. Several ways of winning. You can first subscribe to the channel and comment to any videos posted this month. There will be 25 entries on the Wheel of Names, and if you are a Patreon and YouTube member, you'll have automatic access. Good luck to everyone out there. So let's start, and that is Desync. If you spend any amount of time in Alpha 4.9, you've almost certainly experienced it. During combat, enemy ships can appear to fly normally one moment, only to instantly teleport somewhere else the next. It isn't just because the NPCs suddenly changed direction, it's because your game client and the server no longer agree on where that ship actually is. What you're seeing on your screen isn't always where the target really exists on the server, so you end up firing at a position that only exists on your client. Then when the server finally sends an updated position, your client corrects itself and the ship appears to jump across space in an instant. Not only does this make combat feel unreliable, but it also undermines the skill element of your dogfighting. It's difficult to judge your aim, lead your target, or even know whether you genuinely missed or whether the server simply disagreed with what you're seeing. And the consequences of desync go well beyond combat. The exact same problem can cause collisions with objects that don't even appear to be there. An asteroid, another player's ship, or even a wreckage may exist in a different position on the server than what your client is displaying. Everything looks perfectly safe on your screen until the server corrects your position and suddenly you've collided with something you never saw. When that happens, the consequences can of course be catastrophic. You can lose your ship, your cargo, your mission progress, and in many cases, a significant amount of time. It doesn't feel like you made a mistake, it feels like you were punished by the networking. For a game that's built around spaceflight and ship combat, synchronization between the client and the server isn't just another bug to fix, it's one of the foundations the entire experience depends on. If Alpha 4.10 could significantly reduce desync, it would improve nearly every aspect of the game, from bounty hunting to PvP to mining, hauling, exploration, and simply flying from one destination to another. The next issue I want to see addressed in Alpha 4.10 is the overall server stability. Of course, every online game experiences occasional server problems, but in Star Citizen, server performance often feels like the root cause behind countless other issues players encounter on a daily basis. One of the most visible symptoms is the sheer number of server errors or sometimes even common crashes to desktops. Whether you're accepting missions or interacting with terminals, you're retrieving your ship, you're managing your cargo, or you're just moving items around your inventory, sometimes it feels like you're only a few minutes away from another error interrupting your session. Then there's also server FPS, which has become a major concern throughout Alpha 4.9. While, of course, a healthy server can provide a relatively smooth experience, there can be numerous occasions where server FPS has dropped to incredibly low levels. In some cases, players have reported servers running at less than 1 frame per second, and I have personally experienced that a couple of days ago. It was extremely frustrating. When that happens, of course, the entire universe begins to fall apart. NPCs stop responding properly, elevators become unreliable, interactions take several seconds, sometimes even minutes to register, and actions that should happen almost immediately take a lot of time to process. The game technically remains online, but the experience becomes increasingly difficult to enjoy. Mission progression is another area that is heavily affected by poor server performance. How many times have you completed an objective only to discover that the mission refuses to update? Or maybe you've arrived at your destination only to sit there waiting for the next objective marker to appear. Sometimes the server eventually catches up, but sometimes it doesn't. So the result there is uncertainty. Players are left wondering whether they did something wrong, or whether the mission is bugged, or whether the server simply failed to acknowledge what happened. In a game where many missions can take a considerable amount of time to complete, losing progress because the server failed to register an action is incredibly frustrating. The reality is that many of Star Citizen's most notorious bugs become far more common when server performance deteriorates. That's why improving server stability isn't just about reducing lag, it's about improving the reliability of the game altogether. So if Cloud Imperium games can reduce server errors, maintain healthier server FPS, and ensure that missions constantly track player progress, then Alpha 4.10 could feel dramatically more stable, even without introducing a single new gameplay feature. Hey, who knows, maybe instancing will partially fix the problem. Next, let's talk about freight elevators. When they work, they are a great addition to Star Citizen. They add immersion to cargo handling and make loading and unloading feel like a genuine part of the gameplay. The problem is that they are still too unreliable. One of the most common issues is arriving at an outpost only to discover that the freight elevator is not working. Sometimes they just refuse to respawn, or they just close, right? And they fail to deliver your cargo. Your mission can even come to a complete standstill because it's not even your fault. But when the elevators do work, well, they don't always recognize what you've delivered. A particularly frustrating example is when you are delivering some hand miniables, you lower the cargo into the elevator as instructed, and then it just disappears on the ground and nothing happens. The mission does not update, the ore is gone, and the objective remains incomplete. In other words, you've successfully delivered the cargo, but the server acts as if you never did. It's even worse when you've purchased the required commodities yourself. Instead of losing a few minutes collecting ore, you lose actual credits. You've invested your own money into buying the cargo, loaded it into your ship, transported it across the system, deposited it into the freight elevator, only for the game to swallow both the cargo and your investment without completing the contract. These are not isolated incidents anymore, they are common enough so that many players actively avoid these missions together because they just don't trust them. Cargo hauling has become one of Star Citizen's flagship gameplay loops, and freight elevators are at the heart of that experience. So if 4.10 is going to continue expanding industrial gameplay, then these systems need to become dependable. The real worry that players should have is pirates when it comes to cargo hauling, not elevators that are supposed to be the asset that help you complete your mission. Another issue that I would like to see disappear in Alpha 4.10 is the Cockpit Bug. If you have spent time flying fighters, there's a good chance you've encountered this bug. Your ship is destroyed, but instead of ejecting, dying, or regaining control of your character, you remain trapped in the pilot's seat. At first I thought it was a temporary delay, but after a few seconds, then a minute, I thought that eventually there was nothing that we could do. So yeah, there's no need to wait for the game to catch up, it just is bugged. So you cannot get out of your cockpit, you cannot interact with anything, you cannot respawn, you cannot self-destruct. Your only hope is to get picked up by a bigger ship that has a hangar, and then it would change the status of your character, and that's basically it. I think that the only point there, the only option is to just quit the game. It's very frustrating here, especially if you've done nothing wrong. Losing your ship is already a part of the game, of course, every pilot will accept that, but losing your entire session because the game leaves you permanently trapped into the wreck of your ship is something else entirely. It's also a bug that discourages players from taking risks. Whether you're bounty hunting, engaging in PvP, or simply testing the limits of a new ship, the possibility of becoming soft-locked after your ship is destroyed adds an unnecessary layer of frustration to every fight. A destroyed ship should lead to a respawn, not a dead end, and hopefully Alpha 4.10 finally puts an end to one of the most annoying bugs fighter pilots have ever had to deal with for far too long. Finally, let's talk about bricked items and the system behind them. I think that the original idea is understandable. The game needs a way to protect pledged items from being lost forever, and also the game needs to have systems to prevent these items from being duplicated. But in its current form, the system creates almost as many problems as it solves. The biggest issue is that bricked items simply accumulate over time. Every time you die, abandon the ship, or lose equipment, more unusable items are added to your inventory. They cannot be repaired, and they cannot be sold, and in many cases, they cannot even be discarded. They just stay there. The longer you play Star Citizen, the worse the problem becomes. Your inventory gradually fills with dozens, sometimes hundreds of unusable items that serve no purpose other than cluttering the interface. Finding the equipment you usually want becomes increasingly frustrating because you're forced to scroll past an ever-growing collection of bricked gear. I think the bigger problem here is that the system has done to the sandbox itself. One of the things that made Star Citizen so unique was its emergent gameplay. If you defeated another player, you would claim their ship as your prize. Pirates would steal vessels that they capture, and opportunistic players would just check out some of the components that they may take for themselves. Today, much of that freedom has disappeared. Player ships are effectively protected by the bricking system, making theft and salvaging another player vessel largely impossible. In trying to solve one problem, the game has lost some of the most unpredictable sandbox moments that made the universe feel alive. Of course, I understand why CIG introduced the system, but I don't think the current implementation is the right balance. We need a proper way to clean up bricked items so our inventories don't become permanent junk drawers, and ideally a system that protects pledged assets without removing the freedom for players to steal, recover, or repurpose ships in emergent gameplay. Star Citizen has always been at its best when it lets players write their own stories, and hopefully Alpha 4.10 can move us back to that direction. And that is all for this video. Let me know in the comment section down below, guys, if there are other long-standing issues that you wished Alpha 4.10 may fixed. Did you take part of the PTU? Are you worried about some other issues that may arrive with 4.10? Let me know also in the comment section down below. That's all for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you enjoyed the content, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more. Don't forget to check out our Patreon if you want to support the channel. A big shout out to Dr. Frobin, Socrates Sisters, The Key to the Cure, Shadow Rise, and Zero Crusher. I've been the Eradicator, and I'll see you guys in the next one.